We have a great speaker today. I want to introduce Tracy Bullock. She has 30 years of business development experience to her Sandler training business. She brings and delivers Sandler programs for companies of all sizes across multiple industries, including medical, restaurant, IT, software, consumer product goods. She's also had a 30-year career with Procter & Gamble in customer business development as she developed the sales and management teams. In 2016, Tracy was a finalist for both the Tempe Business Excellence Award and also the Businesswoman Year Award. She is currently on the board of Tempe Chamber of Commerce and also leads the Women in Business Council and facilitates the mentoring program. So please welcome our speaker today, Tracy Bullock.
Hey, everybody. And I just want to echo what Faustine said. You can unmute yourself at any time. You're not going to throw me off. If you have a question, you can either type it in chat or you can unmute yourself. And when you unmute yourself, I'm sure if you have the question, somebody else does too. So no, you're more than have my permission. You don't need a permission. You're a grown-up. Invitation to just unmute and say it. So today we're talking about team engagement, and it might be team of one, a business of one. We were talking earlier today as people were popping on, where you want to engage your clients one-on-one better. It might be your teams, whether you want to do it individually or as a group. So we're going to talk about it from various different ways to make that happen. And Faustine, people are popping up for me to admit them, which is absolutely fine, but I just wanted to let you know people are coming up, and you're probably not seeing it, but I am.
Yes, I see it. I'm admitting them. You're good.
Oh, good. Okay, good. All right. Thanks. So let's talk about what we're going to flow through today. We want to talk about what it costs and what it's worth. I want to give you some tools on how you can use the programs that we have out there that are available, some free, a lot free, or for a small fee every month in order to engage with folks. And then I want to talk about how we actually coach different behaviors to get different results. So let's talk about what working at home entails, right? So how do you know if you're not seeing somebody eyeball to eyeball, if somebody's paying attention? Sometimes we struggle to get people to participate because some folks just don't want to make comments. They want to learn, but they're not making a ton of comments. And it comes back to, are we reaching only part of the team part of the time? What does that look like? So I wanted to build in some numbers for you so you know how important it is for us as good business owners, good leaders of others, and frankly, good peer-to-peer referral partners to really learn how to engage. So just, you can unmute yourself or you can type in the chat, but what does employee engagement mean to you? What does employee engagement mean? Anyone? You might be on mute, so you go to the top of the screen. Being able to connect and participate with teammates. Thanks, Faustine. Anyone else? No? Are you guys shy? Because I am so unshy, it's not even funny. Active participation and contribution. Yeah, right. Feeling comfortable enough at work to reach out to your supervisor. Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you may have an issue. Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen. Laura, thank you. All right. Well, let me show you. Really, the definition of it is exactly what you're talking about, right? That emotional commitment the employee has to the organization and its goals. So in essence, what we're looking at here is being present. You bet, Eileen, being present and part of the creative process. This is when you feel that emotional connection, that you are safe to not only engage with others, but to give your opinion, and be part of the process instead of having the process rule you. Really what we're talking about is when employees care, they use discretionary effort. And it's that discretionary piece that we want to work on here. So what's it worth today? So these are 2018 numbers, so pretty recent if you think about it. But in 2018, in the US, companies spent almost $750 million on employee engagement. So that means different things to different companies, but that's the actual line item that they have out there. So it's team building, it's whatever you want to call it, but $750 million. And in the next decade, it's anticipated we're going to double that. Now, we already know based on January, February to what's going on now, that's going to look different. But let's talk about what it's worth. A 10% investment, a 10% investment on what you spend today, whether it's zero or whether it's $1,000, can increase your profits by $2,400, $2,400 per person per year. Let me say it again. Investing just 10% more as a company can hit your profit line positively by $2,400 per employee per year. We know that people who are highly engaged are 30% more productive than the average teammate. And we know that companies that have highly engaged employees outperform competition by up to 200%. That's doubling their business. And they generate 2.5 times the revenue. So you look at what it's worth in profits, in competitive position, and in revenue, seems like it'd be worth it. The other key piece is people stay. Again, going back to they feel like they have a home, right? We've got you. They feel safe. It's that discretionary piece that we're talking to. When you think about next generational folks, millennials and Gen Zs, excuse me, you can call them iGens or Gen Zs, being connected with a company and feeling like you're part of it is the number one reason, or number 3 reason people want to stay. So if that's what it's worth, what does it cost us? Now, if 30% are, or a little over 30%, are highly engaged, there's that movable middle where 50% of employees are disengaged, right? Sometimes they're in, sometimes they're not. It negatively affects the workplace because it can cause that toxic environment. We lose our competitive edge, and frankly, this is where a lot of startups fail because people put in time, but they don't have the passion or the energy to devote to it. And then there's the other end. So we've got highly engaged, that disengaged. 17.2% of employees are actively disengaged, meaning they're just under the radar, right? So we anticipate, or we look at US companies looked at this and said, of the people who are actively disengaged, $500 million are lost in productivity every year. That's in what they're paying people. That's in what gets done, let alone the quality of the work that gets done going out the door. So actively disengaged employees, what does it cost? Well, if a little over 17% of them are actively disengaged, we know based on the statistics that we studied in 2018, that for every $10,000 in salary, $3,400 of it is wasted. So over a third of the salary per $10,000 is wasted because these people are wasting time. So look at the number. I just picked a company that has 60 people just for grins and giggles for this example. If you have 60 employees, 10 of them are actively disengaged, which is that 17.2%. If we assume an average salary of about $60,000 a year, and you could obviously use this math on anything you want, the cost to the employer. It costs the employer, not the employee, excuse me, lost dollars of over $20,000 of that $60,000 you pay them. It costs employers over $20,000. So you're getting about $40,000 of work. Multiply that by the annual number. The cost for disengagement's over $200,000. Almost $250,000 a year with just 60 employees. So I wanted to do some research on what some enablers would be. So how do we turn that around? And we're going to talk about how to turn it around today, and we're going to talk about how to turn it around virtually. So there's 4 enablers: strategic and narrative, engaging managers, using the employee's voice, making sure they are heard and feel heard, and then the integrity of following through on it. The documentation I got is out of a book by David McLeod and Nina Clark called Engaging for Success. Here's what it breaks down to. Is the strategy of the company easily remembered and repeatable? I would move down to the narratives, tell you that a lot of people can't tell you their company's strategy, let alone what our purpose is for being. Is the message clear? When we involve people in what next looks like, we're now pivoting as a nation, or as a world actually, on how to go to work. So when we involve them in the whole narrative about how we're going to do it, it brings both meaning and purpose to their work lives, because people are motivated individually, and then they deliver that their own personal goals, hopefully mesh well with their teams as well as their companies. But it has to be compelling, because they need to understand where they fit in the organization now and going forward. And going forward needs to be beyond December 31st of 2020, right? Is this a long-term play for me? Can I fit here? Because that inspires people to do their best. We need to be authentic. And that word is overused. Transparency and authenticity are overused. But I want to make sure you understand that it's not just you that has to believe it and live it. It's your team. It means that when we communicate with people, it's from the heart. That's how we get people all in. So if you go up a slide, they're inspired to give their best. And oh, by the way, they're in because you're speaking it in your own words, the way that they need to hear it, not just the way that it makes sense to you. So think about communication styles and how people communicate differently. It's really important to be able to speak to people the way they need to hear you, not just the way you want to speak it. So what type of communications do you have in your company today? How do you communicate today? Certainly by email, and I get that. What else? This is important in a virtual environment, by the way. We're starting to build to that piece. How else do you communicate today? Virtual meetings, a lot of conference calls, you betcha. Slack, oh, I like Slack. Text. Google Hangouts, yeah, okay. So, and Google Hangouts and Slack kind of build the that immediacy thing. Hey, by the way, I just heard Zoom. Yeah, Kathleen says Zoom. Zoom is coming out with a new program called, just wrote it down, Zoom Hangouts, or Zoom for Home, excuse me. And it's the first time that there's going to be like a bigger computer screen that's actually a touch screen that stays in place. So kind of interesting. People are thinking of using it for our education outage right now. Some are using text, you bet. So when we see people, not just talk to them, but we actually see people, you get to use those elements of communication too. So you actually get to use body language, tonality. We're not relying on how we interpret something and encode it. so the message isn't lost. So great. I love the tools, because what they do is they empower trust. And that's the key to getting more people engaged. Another thing I want to make sure of, especially in an environment where you've got some workers at home, some workers in the office. My sister manages a financial institution where she's the COO. She's had to work out a plan where you've got the red team and the blue team, and they go on and off different weeks about coming into the office so they can control the number of people. But how do you stay visible to them? How do they understand what other people are doing? How do they connect as teams? One of the biggest issues she and I have been talking about is, how does she get to know each of them and their needs today, which was probably a very different look before we did a stay-at-home order. So she's in Colorado. They went early. How do people know that you know them, and do they know you? So what kind of steps are you taking to be visible to your team? How do people know what you're doing? How do they know what your management style is? How do they know what's coming up? What kind of tools are you using there? What are you doing? You can take yourself off mute or just type in chat. Base camp with a list of projects. Okay, so great way to keep track of the work that's being done. So Laura just said that team meetings, daily huddles, one-to-ones, absolutely. So with Laura's base camp, right, that keeps track of our project work, also connecting with people on how they're feeling, if they need any help. Because think about it, we could get up and walk across the hall to ask for help if we were brave enough to do that. But if somebody actually has to pick up the phone or pick up a text, right, or type something to say, ooh, I don't know how to do it, can you help me? It's intimidating, maybe more so than the world we had before we were hit by the coronavirus. So let's talk about engaging managers, right? The number one reason people leave their company is because of their manager. Either their manager doesn't know how to manage, or their manager doesn't get them, or they didn't feel a part of the process. The number 3 reason they leave a company is because they don't have a relationship with coworkers. They feel either left out, or that they don't have a tribe at work like they would develop at home. So if that's the case, think about, what do you want? You don't have to type anything, but I want you to think about, what do you want from your manager? And if you're a business owner, I'm sure you've worked for people before. What made you leave? What made you stay? And if you could have a piece of paper where you made a line down and say, what do you want from people that you either work for, or what did you want when you worked out for someone else? What do you want and what don't you want? So I know when I was a young manager growing up, I knew what I wanted to emulate. I knew who I wanted to model, but I also knew who I never wanted to resemble. And keeping that in mind is so important. But understanding that for you might be totally different than somebody else, which gets back to, you have to know people individually in order to keep them engaged. Once they're engaged, we get that discretionary effort. Because the question is, what do you want from managers? What do your employees want from you? Quick type in the chat, how can we find this question out? What do your employees want from you? How could we find out?
Ask them.
Thank you. I know. Thanks, Liam. That's exactly right. And how many people are hesitant because they're afraid of what they're going to get back, right? What if they ask for something I can't do? Well, then great. Have a good discussion about what you can do, right? So as we think about flexible work environments, just reaching out saying, hey, by the way, 2 things I've never asked you. how can what do you need from me right now? Do an anonymous survey. I love that. Do an anonymous survey if you'll think they'd be more honest. Absolutely. Anything missing with what we're doing today? Okay. Out of curiosity, if we do those things, how will that help you meet your personal goals? So now I'm taking it a step further, because then it ties what you're deliberately doing as a manager back to their own goals. Lots of assessment, like a 360. You betcha. What's working, what's not working, ask peers, etc. Nice feedback, guys. How do you know? There you go. So when we think about engaging managers, you've all be part of the team, set clear personal objectives to help them understand how it meets the objectives of the organization, but also great managers coach us, meaning that one-on-one, let me help you maximize your skills and bring out the best in each of us. We want to give regular, thoughtful feedback on behaviors for constant opportunity for improvement. When I'm talking about behaviors, guys, I'm not talking about results. If you're measuring only the numbers, if you're looking at the numbers, they've already happened. So the goals and the coaching and the individual conversations need to be about behavioral aspects, because we can control behaviors. The behaviors lead to results. Good managers get thanked for our work in both creating a culture, but more importantly, recognition. Now, keep in mind, not everybody likes public recognition, but everybody deserves recognition on a job well done. I hear time and time again about how people say, I say, what do you do to celebrate success? What do you mean? I just said, well, we have, a pizza party, once a year or something. I'm like, how do you celebrate the milestones, the little things that change behavior or reinforce what you want done? And it's a question that stumps a lot of people. I have a group of folks that I train on Fridays that are most of them work independently, whether they own a business or whether they're out in the field by themselves. And I'll say, what do you guys do to reward yourself for a job well done? And you would have thought that I asked them, do you want to go in front of the firing squad? Because most of them just go, well, I don't know, move on to the next thing. Eileen says, celebrating and and acknowledging go a long way to inspire engagement. They absolutely do. Absolutely. Thank you. So this is the part where I wanted to start bringing in ideas of how we can engage virtually. Now, I'm using Zoom because thank goodness we're on Zoom, makes sense, but I use Zoom as my training platform. So how do we engage and where do we set it up? I'm actually showing you under your picture on Zoom, you set it up on, click the setting icon right here, and you launch the more view setting, the more view thing at the bottom. Okay, so there's all kinds of things you can do. These are the basics. You go to meeting basics, you've already got your meeting scheduled. So let's talk about, in basics, what can we toggle on and off? Well, how about the chat? Faustine has toggled on chat so we can all use it. But unless you turn it on, people can't use it. We can also privately chat. And then there's this concept of a whiteboard. You can actually turn a whiteboard on and set it up to automatically save. I click this. So during my meetings, I'll be capturing what, for instance, we say, what could you use for employee engagement, or what do you think it is? Just put a whiteboard up, automatically saves when I'm done, so that it reinforces the conversation in two ways. Some people are very visual. Some people need to see what was talked about. Unfortunately, not everybody can make every meeting, so what a great way to do it. And then there's the nonverbal feedback thing that looks like this. They don't have the middle finger and they don't have a thumbs down, so don't ask me. I've tried it. Those are the only two that are available. It's like, yay, I like it, or yep, I've got it. There's also polling, and I love polling because to the anonymous survey or the 360, this is an anonymous way for participants to give us input, on ideas. So let's say we have ideas and we have 2 or 3 different things we've brainstormed, and you want to get consensus around it. But you've always got those people who won't speak out, who won't share. So polling is a great way to get the majority vote. If everybody gets 1 vote or 3 votes, right? Whatever you want it to be, all you have to do is set up a poll. So let me show you how to do that. So again, we're back in settings. We're back in meeting basics. We want polling turned on, and we create the information we want to know ahead of the meeting. So how do we do it? We go to the meeting we have scheduled. Then you add a question. You can add single or multiple choice answers. And then when you actually want to start the meeting, you hit polling, and it launches it. You can edit the poll mid-stride. So let's say the discussion came up that, oh, we don't really want to know whether your favorite color is blue. We really want to know if your favorite color is green. And we have a yes/no answer. We could literally change it in motion. But it's a good way to get that active participation. And so, for instance, we have 14 people online, well, 12 besides Faustine and I. So if I launched a poll right now, I'd know whether or not all 12 people, I wouldn't know who they were, but I would know how many people were responding. But a great way to have people give safe feedback. When we talk about employee voice, what we're talking about here is employees are central to the solution, not the problem. Let me say it again. We want to enroll people. We want their voice on how they think they can help us solve as a company for a problem. They have ideas we haven't thought of, and we want to get that diversity of thought. So how do you invite them to contribute, right? It's not just about what they do, but it's their expertise and their ideas. Because if we don't ask, we won't know. Great managers who are after this are really having conversations in different ways. So we talked about text, we talked about email, we talked about Slack, we talked about how voice is heard and different views are taken into an account. But if you want to talk about lean processes or continuous improvement, great way to do it. I don't know if anybody's in, well, I do too know. We have a cabinet manufacturer. But you also have to have mechanisms in place to capture the voice. Excuse me. That's why I like the use of whiteboards so much, and other programs that we were talking about certainly can capture them. And then speaking of organizational integrity, if we've gotten their input and we've asked them to share their voice, you absolutely can't ignore it. I have a company, a global company I'm working with. They are a particular function within a company, and there's a huge gap between their trust on what's always happened in the past and the new manager who's brought me on to help facilitate their growth, because they don't believe after they've shared their voice that anything is going to change. So unfortunately, over time, they've lost trust, and it makes collaboration slow. So at the end of the month, I'm working 100% with them on how we build trust back up and what we do to build trust, to speed collaboration and increase productivity. Because right now, they don't believe that what they say is going to be anything that their new manager is going to take into consideration. And he's a global VP because everybody before him hasn't honored the voice. Which gets to the whole concept of role modeling. If you're willing to share your ideas, your successes and your failures, you're leading that for everyone. As managers, we need to be held accountable, and we've already talked about how important rewards and recognition are. So how do you guys build trust today? This is an interesting question, but I'd love to hear how you're doing it today. Be easier if you unmuted yourself to share. Any ideas on how to build trust today? None? Here's one. Very open and honest communication with my team. When I get it wrong, I share that too, as a learning experience. Beatrice, thank you for saying that. Transparency. Corey Ann shares transparency. I believe the best managers, the best trainers, the best coaches, mentors already do it by sake of the mentoring. Share not only what's worked or what didn't, share their epic fails as well as their epic successes, because it lets everybody know that taking risk, you don't get whacked for on a regular basis. Thanks for sharing that.
Sounds like what you're saying, Tracy, is showing your human side.
Exactly right. Because how can you build for trust and discretionary effort if you aren't, thank you, Kathleen, willing to you can make mistakes, and the say-do gap is shortened if not eliminated. Thanks, guys. So one other tool I wanted to show you to build engagement and get this whole collaboration piece that we want to talk about. I do this on every training session I do virtually now, and that's putting people into breakout rooms. I'm going to show you how to do it, but breakout rooms you know how you have the small interactions when you're face to face, you know, you have the water cooler conversations and you talk to the person sitting at the table next to you. You might count off by 3 and have people break out in groups. Whatever it is, it's hard to do now without a tool like this. So I use this every time. This is a more advanced skill. In Zoom, it's there. You just have to scroll down further. So it looks like, here's schedule a meeting, basic and advanced. You have to turn breakout rooms on, and I'm going to show you how you decide to break people out. You can either, from the bottom of the screen, right, you choose the number of rooms. So there's 14 of us. I would probably put us in 4 different rooms. So we have, 3 people in one room, 4 in another. I can assign them manually, or I can automatically let the program do it. If we want to do a second breakout, I can replicate that same room, or I can move people around, and I can do it within the program itself. I set the amount of time I want the breakout room to go for, and everybody in the session gets a countdown. So think about when you do breakouts, when you're asking people's opinion, hey, spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, think amongst yourselves, at your tables, or brainstorm for 5 minutes, and then let's share it. People are more willing to share in small groups than they are in bigger groups to start. And you have somebody share the ideas back out. So another great way to get small group participation in a larger group format. I love these 2 rules, which is why I put them in here. If we could see my office, it would say above my TV, my big TV that I use as my projector, it says, don't be tied to the result, because the result already happened. I'm tied to my behaviors because I can't manage anything I can't control. The only thing I'm in control of is my behavior. So when I am acting as a good manager, a good trainer, a good coach of others, I'm focused on helping them get better at their behaviors to deliver what they're trying to achieve, not what they're trying to achieve. Because if we're only measuring the results, the numbers, the profit, the market share, that's a lagging indicator of success. I want a leading indicator that says, how am I going to get there and what skills? Here's where I am. Here's where I need to be. What do I need to do to fill it? So I threw this in because I love it. 6 secrets to effective virtual management. We have to have clear expectations. What are the benchmarks and how are we going to hold people accountable? It gets back to that setting expectations and being very clear, building trust, getting collaboration, right? It's focused on behaviors. We have to track results, but we focus on the behaviors. The daily, weekly check-in meetings, and understanding now that people are working at home and have to manage multiple things. A lot of them are managing 2 working parents and children of multiple ages. And, you know, in March, April, and May, they were managing schoolwork. It looks like we may be headed down that same path going into the fall. So we have to figure out when's the best time of day to reach that individual based on what's going on in their life, when they can focus and when you can get the information back. We need to establish clear communications among team members. We need to make sure they're also sharing information. So doing it on Zoom, doing it in meeting rooms are great, but it doesn't replace picking up the phone or texting, hey, I have a quick question, can you help me? That would happen if we were live. Secondly, we want to use the right tools. We talked about a lot of them. They absolutely work. Again, gives you that immediacy and also gives you the ability to collaborate, share ideas, and get that diversity of thought on a regular basis. Now, you can bet that these things don't just happen overnight. You have to prepare for them. Think about polling, think about your breakout rooms. Who cares about dress code at this point? But you might, right? If you're going to see a customer, you want to show up like you want to look. Like if you were knocking on their door, you want to show up exactly what your personal presence says who you are, right? Check your environment. Obviously, we need to test the technology before we do that. But if we know what an agenda is going to be, there's nothing, anybody here ever been to a meeting where you had a meeting to get ready to have the meeting to solve the problem, right? I hate meetings where we don't have action items, but I can't tell you the number of meetings I've been to that there's an agenda, but there's no really reason outcome for it. Yeah, Faustein's capital letters, yes. We need to know who's coming and making it visually appealing, right? Commit to open communication. We've talked about it, but making sure people feel safe is a big one. You have to know your employees, not just the motivators that we've talked about, but we've also talked a little bit about DISC styles. And I didn't use the term DISC, but what we're talking about here, some people are very task-driven. Some people are very people-driven. Some people are very auditory, meaning they can just close their eyes and hear and get it. Other people need to see it and feel it and touch it. So we have to know our employees. I used to make a chart. That's why I loved this, and I stuck it in. Who are they? What's their DISC style? How do they like to get information? And how do I keep them engaged? Next, schedule regular meetings. You guys have already come up with this. We already know it's important. But the most important thing here is you got to stay the course. Don't start something with a lot of energy and let it peter out. People are looking to us as managers. People are looking to us as coaches, as business owners to stay the course. Your customers and your clients are too. So don't start something that you don't mean to continue. My New Year's resolution back in December was start as I mean to continue. Start my year as I mean to finish my year. So we've talked about employee engagement, what it's worth and what it costs, how we can engage remotely using all kinds of different tools and how. And then we've ended with some ideas on how to coach, what those 6 secrets are, not only to get better behaviors out of your team, but frankly, to have those behaviors drive your results, because it's your choice. Do we want to increase productivity, profits, and revenue? Or are we not going to have a plan and lose our productivity. Thanks. Any questions? You can take yourself off mute now if you want, but I'm right at my 45 minutes. I've got a chat here. You have a daily workout, 10 to 2. Stretch is what I love this. Stretch is what you do. Music blast, company-wide, for 30 seconds. Everybody stands up and moves for that time. It's so fun to hear the laughs and see the team participation. It boosts morale, keeps energy in the company going. I love that. Love this idea. Ditto, ditto. Absolutely. Do you know Arm & Hammer, believe it or not, they'd have different people assigned for a week, and that person had to be the leader of whatever activity it was, whether it was calisthenics, whether it was hanging a spoon on their nose. But they actually moved the leadership around from the employees, not the managers, so that everybody took part in that process. So great ideas, great share. Anything else I can help you guys with? I want to respect your time, but I don't want to hang up if you have other questions. Yep. So you can reach me at email, you can hit me up on LinkedIn, whatever works. But if you have other questions, I do a ton of work in this area. Happy to reach out, and I'm happy to help. You bet. I've so enjoyed it. Faustine, anything else you'd like to cover? You do jumping jacks twice a day, 50, just to get the blood flowing. Do you know that one of the guys that I talk to every Thursday morning, I have a group of folks that I just talk to, he hung a pull-up bar in his bedroom, and he had to move his office to his bedroom when they had to go home. And so every time he goes out to get something to eat, to go to the bathroom, whatever, he makes himself do 5 pull-ups to come back in the room. All right, guys, I think that's it. You bet. Thank you, guys. All right, with that, I'm going to end the meeting, and that should stop the recording. As Faustine said, it will be available in a couple days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Please have a great day, everyone, and please stay safe out there.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.